Do you want to get Sam Freedman to come up? I'm not sure if he needs the steps because he's talking. So Sam, Anthony and Sam trained together at Flemington and Pinecliff, and as I said earlier, the Freedmans are well, Freedman Racing is the stable that we started off our journey with, and it's actually been, through our history, our most successful horses have been with the stable, and we're very appreciative of Sam's time again, and very exciting for us is that we get back to a Group 1 race this Saturday. So the first horse we'll talk about is Open-Minded, and we took a long-term strategy in the autumn to get into this Group 1 race next Saturday, at his third run in the prep. So how's he progressing towards that run next week, mate?
Yeah, he's been great. He's 2 runs this prep have really been typical of his preps. He normally takes a run or two to get to Thoroughbreds. He normally takes a run or two to hit his straps, so he's sort of not been bowling around, but he's needed a couple of runs, and his 3rd and 4th runs into his preps are normally his best. So the Rupert Clark's been front of mind for him, knowing he was going to get into the race, and actually has won one of his first 2. He's probably going to carry more weight than he would want to carry in a race like that. So not saying we weren't out there to try and win his first 2, but we were happy to see him get beaten and get fit this Saturday and line up on this coming Saturday with a lightweight. He's a horse that obviously makes his own luck. His record of course is as good as I've seen on any horse we've had in training. So again, he's going to won, I don't know, 8 races on him or something. So yeah, he's going to run a big race. Whether he's good enough to win a Rupert Clark, I'd probably, to be honest with you, doubt that he is. But he's a horse that he'll be there at the 200 or 300, and he'll be grinding away. And if there's a good one in it, I'm sure they'll grab him. But he certainly makes them earn it. When he goes to the races, and he's been an amazing horse. To be honest, when he was first in the stable, probably didn't think a lot of him, and in his track record you don't think a lot of him. He would probably struggle to get past the major and his work at home, but race day he really switches on, and we're used to having horses the other way around. They show you plenty in the morning, they show you a lot on race day, so happy to have that.
Yeah, he was, he seemed underdone a little bit first up, but he ran a good race. So we have been sort of working towards this run to sort of peak him. Yeah, as you said, whether he's good enough or not, do you think he will actually peak on the day next Saturday? Is he showing you improvement in the work leading up to this?
Yeah, he is. He looks fit, as I said. He's not a horse that we work and go, wow, he's working amazingly well. He's just a horse that you look at and say that he's fit. Mainly the guide you get with him is how he is around the stable, which he's full of life. You see him on race day, he's a real handful. Matty who straps him. Yeah, I strapped him at the trials the other day, and Shannon saw me wrestling him around. So he's a handful. So if he's anything different on race day, you probably have a little concern, but I'm sure you'll see him feeling well. And that's where you get the guide with him. We know he's fit now, and he's ready to go. It's just whether he's good enough. But he deserves a chance in this sort of race. It's not often he gets to line up in a Group 1, and I think these handicaps give you an opportunity down in the weights to at least give a shout. I'm sure you guys will, on Saturday at least, he will be there at some point on the home turn, and hopefully he's there by the end of the year.
Do you as a stable weigh your horses to get a guide as to whether they're fit or not?
Yeah, we do every Monday. We do trot-ups and weights. So, and Brad, who you all know, he sort of keeps track of it all, and it all goes into Prism, and you see the natural progression of a horse. So, Open-Minded, for example, probably ran first up maybe 15 kilos heavier than his winning weight. So you're aware that there's certainly going to be improvement there, but we're not generally the sort of stable to have them screwed down for their first or even probably second run. Particularly in the spring, it can be a little bit harder to get them really conditioned and ready for a spring campaign, particularly in the winter that we've had. So you let the racing bring them on, and particularly a horse like him, we knew he was getting into this race, there was no need to have him completely ready to go, just as long as he was showing the signs in his races that his action's good and he's pulling up well. So yeah, the weights is a good sign. I mean, they can fool you a little bit. I mean, they're 500 plus kilos, so if they there's a lot of factors that can affect their weight, and it's not always a true indicator. But and as they get older, they obviously can build a bit of muscle, and you probably get a better guide once they're getting towards their 4-year-old year, even 5-year-old, because 2-year-olds are obviously going to get bigger and stronger in their 3-year-old season. So it's just as a guide, but it certainly helps with a horse like him, who's we've got a good benchmark on what his winning weight is, and I'm sure he'll be there or thereabouts on Saturday.
And I've always said, I mean, Kieran and David have obviously dominated Group 1s across Australia. We've always said that you and your father always picked their horses on Group 1 day. So who's taking credit for that? Matt? For you?
Sam.
I know your dad's been doing it a lot longer than you, but he just seems to have a knack that they don't need to win their lead-up race into the Group 1, but on Group 1 day they're ready. So is there any sort of trick to that? Well, not that you want to give it away to the boys, but is there any sort of knack to it that you find at the stable?
I don't think I need to give Dave any tips on how to win a Group 1. No, I don't think so. I think, particularly these handicaps, if you know a horse is going to, like Mr. Sneaky, I suppose he was there ready to win it and bumped into a pretty good one. So
Don't talk about the horse, Sam.
but it's not something that we don't like to run a horse in a Group 1 if they're making up the numbers. It's something Dad has always been big on. He doesn't like obviously losing and getting beaten. He doesn't want to see horses run down the track. So if they're lining up, we think that they deserve that shot in the race. And as you would have heard with the dialogue with Open-Minded, umming and ahhing whether it is the right sort of race to go for him. But the thinking is ultimately that he may never get another opportunity to run in a race like this, and there is always the chance to drop him back in grade to a listed race at Flemington or something over the carnival and bring him back. But he profiles similar to some sort of winners in that race, but get him in a low weight and give it a shake. I think the old man has been doing it for so long, and he knows what sort of horses can take. He takes to win these sorts of races. You generally don't win them when it's an afterthought. If you just throw a horse in, it's very rare that you'll pull it off. So there's always long-term plans to get horses to races. Most of the time it never works out, but it's likely it does.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that he runs his best races when he leads and can hold the fence, and so the barrier draw on Wednesday will be most important to him. But yeah, good to be back at Group 1 level. Brazen Bully, he had a disappointing prep last time, had a few niggles. Has he sort of overcome those niggles this prep? He also had a bout of chondritis 2 weeks ago, and can you just sort of explain what that is to the layman as well?
Yeah, he's actually also probably had a bit of chondritis throughout his career. Every now and again his throat just gets a bit inflamed and bothers him, and it affects his breathing and his wind. So they need to just go on a course of antibiotics to bring it under control, and you really need to be a little bit patient. Sometimes it can stop your preparation and they need a break. Thankfully his has cleared up, and he obviously trialled on Friday, and visually I watched it and thought he was just okay. I mean, the trial was decent enough, but Damien Thornton, who rode him, came in and said he's going very well. He'll run well next week, so we'll take him to Adelaide for a benchmark 60-1100. I think ultimately long term this horse will be one that you'd probably take to Queensland, and he's a horse that can certainly notch up midweek races up there. He can probably get a Saturday race up in Queensland. We probably haven't ever seen the complete best of him, just he doesn't do a lot right. He wants to hang in, he doesn't help himself, he wants probably a bit of sting out of the ground, but he doesn't want a heavy track. Those horses can get a little bit tricky to place, particularly at this time of year. But I think next week in Adelaide, he's fit and well, and you get a really good guide on with that. But in being completely honest, which I think we always like to be as a stable, he's probably one that Queensland will be a really good location to see him probably perform his best.
And when you do run interstate, which we've run a lot of our horses interstate and had a lot of success there, do you notice it takes longer for the horse to recover for the trip there and back? Do you need to space their runs more when you do run them interstate?
You certainly have to consider it, and particularly if you're going interstate more than once in a preparation. So I think if you're going to run a horse in Adelaide, bring it back and run it back in Adelaide 2 weeks later, you've got to be aware that that can have an impact on obviously how they're going to perform. I mean, it's a lengthy enough trip. It's 10 hours by float. They've then got to read up on the day and they've got to do everything right. And it's obviously more difficult to really know how it's affected them when you get reading up. Sometimes it just takes a bit of energy out of them. So we've actually had really good success taking your horses over to Adelaide. It seems like for us it's a place to take a horse that we don't think is quite up to midweek or Saturday grade in Melbourne, but they can go over there a trip away, which can certainly change a horse's attitude. Even a horse like Haywood, who early doors was really hard work when he was first in the stable and a little bit unruly. And if you said to me that he'd be getting out to the trip that he's running, I would have thought there was no way, given how hard he was going in his track work. But a trip away like that, and he's obviously now going for a break, it can really grow a horse up. And then we've often seen them launch into midweek Saturday races in Melbourne off Adelaide wins. So it's just a nice stepping stone between not to undermine Adelaide completely, but between a country race in Victoria, which is still very competitive, to probably a midweek, probably in between the two, which we think is a nice stepping stone for a young horse coming along.
Yeah, we love Adelaide prize money. It's the same currency. Set the Profit, gelding by Extreme Choice. He was a slow maturer, but his latest prep was full of merit. He won 3 from 5, got out to 1600. Where do you think he's placed? Do you think he'll get out further, or do you think he'd be a horse that you'd remain at that sort of 1400 to 1600 metre sort of range next prep?
He's always given the impression that he will get further, and you'd love to think that maybe he will get out to 1800 or 2000. He relaxes pretty well in his races. Mindful that we had the half-sister, Prophet's Thumb, who was a late maturer like him. We got her at a 4-year-old year, and we're probably benefiting from management as a young horse when she was at 5. That was, she wasn't raced a lot. She showed very good talent, but they made a point of bringing her back to relax and finish off. But her best came when she was 4 and 5 years old. And mindful of this horse, when you look at him, he's a big, long, scopy horse, and he actually probably looks more in the role of a horse who wants to get over a little bit of ground. And I think he will in time. He's probably his last run was just at the end of a long preparation. The ground wasn't great. He was inside horses, which he didn't enjoy. I think we've really obviously decided to give him a break and target summer races. He can get into Saturday grade races over the summer on top of the ground, I think, with no problem. And if he can get out to 2000, it opens a lot of doors. He can run that sort of trip. If he can't, he's still going to be very close over 14 or a mile. He's become very genuine. He had a little bit of barrier issues early in his career, which the half-sister had as well. But he seems to be maturing really well, and he was physically very, very mature as a 2-year-old, and got it wrong as a colt at the race the first time. But I think in his next prep, we'll probably end up seeing the best of him.
Haywood, a horse that we're very excited about, another promising 4-year-old. He too won 3 of 5 starts this prep. He looks like a horse with real promise to get through the grades. What's your observation of him through his last prep?
Yeah, he had a terrific prep. We talked about the idea of spelling him before his last run, as there wasn't a whole lot of races around, and we decided we'd go to that Adelaide race, and it worked out brilliant. I'm glad we did, not only because he won, but it probably gave the impression that he could go another furlong. He was going half pace the last 50, looking around and not really mind on the job. But when we first got him, he was probably being taught to run through the ride a little bit, to trial well, and I think making a point of bringing him back and getting him to relax. Seeing his first prep, even in training when he was trialling, we were trying to get him to relax. Then we were worried that he might end up a bit one-dimensional, that needs to go out in front and lead, but he's showing now that he's really, this prep's been the making of him to relax, switch off, take runs in between horses, show a good turn of foot. He's probably in a similar boat to Set to Profit. There's probably not a whole lot between the two of them, I would say. They're both in the same bracket that hopefully we can separate them over the summer, but they'll both have preparations to be looking to get to Saturday races through the summer.
Yeah, so he's a horse by Super One. We bought him off English Digital. He won a trial. He was to be sold to Hong Kong, and he failed the Hong Kong vet. That to me, I'm not worried by that, because the Hong Kong vet can be very strict. And there's lots of horses that have failed the Hong Kong vet that have come out, and actually Lombardo is one example. He came out and won a Group 1 in Goodwood after being knocked back by the Hong Kong vet. So, but being by Super One, I would have thought he was just a fast sprinter even when I bought him. But you've basically retrained this horse. So sort of what techniques have you done to actually retrain him? Because now he settles in behind speed, switches off, and then he can sprint off at fast speed.
Yeah, I think that early on in their career you've got an opportunity to try and do the right thing by the horses in the back. Some of them won't respect being put in behind horses, so just little things in their gallops, just gallop them right in behind one, right up behind them, and leave them there for the entire gallop. And they learn, hopefully, that it's fine to just switch off behind them. And then you use their trials to switch off and come out and feed a couple. You don't want to get them used to following a horse around, because they won't win many races if they don't hit the front. But some horses respect it. Thankfully, him, and to be honest, I wouldn't have thought he would, because the way he was early days, we never thought he would. But the more work you do with him and putting them in different environments and using Covington and Mike as a tool to change them around and put them on different tracks, and as I said, in the trip to Adelaide, it's all sort of just growing them up. You can quickly pigeonhole a horse as being one-dimensional. Some Iron Water, for example, probably was one-dimensional, and if you tried to ride him in behind him, he wouldn't finish off as well. So there are horses that just doesn't work with, but he's one that, thankfully, it has been a success.
Dirty Mind. Some people call him Dirty Minded. He's open-minded's half brother. The new run last week was quite a nice effort, I thought. How's he pulled up after the run, and are you going to step him up to 1400 next start?
Yeah, we are. He's been a horse that during him, you've had to be very patient. He's taken a lot of time to mature. He's had a few little knee issues, and just had to be very patient. Getting in the races at this point in his career, it's a testament to the horse. He has just kept improving, and his run ran probably exactly how he thought he would run. Was 3 wide on the speed, probably was about 90-95% fit, so knocked up a little bit late. But, put himself well. We'll go to, I think it's Kyneton Monday week. There's a 1450, 1450 metre maiden. And obviously being the half-drove environment, you would think that the trip should be okay. He relaxes very well, and he would be able to settle right there on the speed over that sort of trip, and around that track it's probably beneficial to be near the pace. So seems to handle all types of going. But the best of him again is probably next prep. I mean, sort of mindful of not over-facing him in the first time we really put him under pressure for a racing preparation. So the first up run, we weren't going to push on if he didn't pull up 100%. I think we knocked him around a little bit, but he pulled up well, so we'll go to the next one. And it's just a run-by-run case. We'd probably lean towards giving him a little bit of a break after the main next week. Hopefully he goes out a winner, but he should just keep improving into his next prep as well.
So you think the girlfriend Gelding, 3-year-old, so you think, as I've mentioned on a number of people that inquire about this horse, they don't run as 2-year-olds a lot, they're 3-year-old types. He's currently spelling. Is he due back into pre-training soon?
Yeah, he is. He's taking a lot of time, but again, that breed, we wouldn't expect to see him up and going. So he's one that I think this prep will look to get him to certainly trials and a race. The impression we're getting with him is he wants ground, so they don't show you heaps in the track work until you put him out into the trials over 1200 or a bit further. So one that we'd be hopeful that he's going to get out to a mile plus. So it'll be a little while until you probably see the best of him. But time was always going to be on that horse's side from the day he was in the stable. It was never the case of getting him up and going as a 2-year-old and getting into the trial and races. We were always keen to just let them develop. And I think one thing that's just being patient with a breed like that can pay dividends later in their career, rather than just trying to rush through and get to trials and races when they're just physically and mentally not ready for it. So this prep, I think he'll be ready to go in the summer as well, I would think, and they're certainly looking to run him. And I think if he also, you'd probably see him over 1400 and getting out to a mile plus straight after that.
And finally, I think he's probably a very exciting filly, the Hellbent Bentenny filly. You purchased her from Magic Millions this year. I thought she was a standout filly at that sale. I know Lenny was in love with her as well. She's by Hellbent, which is a Group 1 winning son of I Am Invincible, and he's leading the second season sire tables at the moment. What's your impressions of her to date? I know we haven't sort of galloped her hard, but she's quite physically strong, Philip.
Yeah, she is. She's mentally quite sound as well. We've only given her the one preparation in the stable. She just had 3 weeks in, which is pretty standard for a lot of our 2-year-olds in New Zealand sort of coming in. We find it pretty important to just make sure they go to the paddock on a good note, that they're not over the top and sour off with their work. So she didn't have a lengthy prep, but she got up to doing some 600 evens, which is a very easy piece of work. The horses do it pretty comfortably, but you know, for the babies and the young horses, it's just a way of getting them to switch on and put them in company with another horse. And she pleased us there. She was pretty professional. She went straight and she paired up with another horse, and they just went to the line together. So she's been out, I think, 2 weeks now. She'll probably have another month or so. We're mindful, we've had obviously the record with the 2-year-olds, but they can do it in one prep. So if you don't need to just keep getting them in and keep giving them 6 and 8, 10-week preparation. The older horses can handle that, but our philosophy is more that the 2-year-olds probably need. The more time they've got in the paddock, the better they're going to do when you ask them to really do something in their preps, and they do it a lot on nervous energy. So their next preparation should probably be in at a time where there's going to be some nice 2-year-old races around. So if I can't stand here and tell you whether she is going to be one that features them or not, but she'll be in at a time to at least give her a chance in those races.
And you're not a stable, you are a patient stable, you're not a stable that's actually renowned for, your 2-year-old winners, although you do place them very well. But you've won 3 of the last 4 Blue Diamonds. And probably the one you didn't win was probably your best horse, Hanseatic. Is there, as you say, you brought him in for short prep, is there a trick to it? I mean, how does your stable, that's not the biggest in Victoria, get to be so successful in the biggest 2-year-old race in Victoria?
I think firstly you need the right horse for it. I mean, if you don't have the cattle in the stable to feature in those races, it doesn't matter how well you train them or how patient you are with them or when you push the buttons. But so you need the cattle in the stable. But yeah, I think the mindset of getting 2-year-olds ready that they need to be up and going like now. We won't have. You might have 1 or 2 runners at best before Christmas, which is the Blue Diamond winners for us. So we really get going, and they do it in one preparation generally. Hanseatic obviously was probably the best of all, and didn't win it. But yeah, I think it's just being patient, knowing when they needed a break. There's been plenty of times when we've trialled horses. They won trials impressively in November around then. I think Tournier, for example, he won a trial in November, could easily have just gone to the races and made the decision. Give him a month out, let's just see if he is up getting the Blue Diamond, because you're better off giving them that break than, yes, they're here and now, you can go on in that race, but then they've got to stay up for 3 or 4 months, and 2-year-olds very quickly just getting one morning and they're lying down and just when they're over the top. So I think it's all a bit of timing. Because we don't have heaps in work, we've got a good grip on which dealings are worth giving their chance in winning them. And I think once you get to having a few too many, you can miss the one that might be there, and we really are mindful of not getting too big, because we want to make sure that you don't miss that one that's there and they're not in the paddock at the time, and they probably could be lining up and moving on and something like that.
Thanks, Sam. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. Again, we'll have another quick break.